Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
And we are here. Welcome, everyone, to Silverline's Wednesday Wham. I'm your host, even though it looks like I have an icon of the fearless leader, Roland Mann, there, which is kind of odd. But hey, if it works, it works. Rory Boyle and Rob Davis are our special attendees tonight because, hey, we're all special because we're the only three people here. So it's going to be a blast, right, guys?
That's right. We're going to try and make it so.
Let's do that. Before I go any further, I want to remind everybody who's here to send in their Christmas greeting video. I was asked to do that to remind everyone. Have you guys started doing that yet? Your Christmas video?
Have not, but I have an idea what I'm going to do. Didn't know I was supposed to do one.
Yeah, there's all the creators were encouraged to do like a 10 to 15 second little short that says, Merry Christmas from Silverline, and identify who you are, of course, and all that. So, but at any rate, tonight we want to thank, first of all, as we always do, our sponsor, Daytona Beach Comic Convention. And we always appreciate their support and hosting us at all the conventions. And tonight's subject, as you guys know, is choose your superpower. I know that all of us at one time or another have gotten together with our geeky friends on occasion, and perhaps over a few adult beverages, have discussed the pros and cons of what if we had superpowers, and which ones would we want, and why, and what would the limitations be, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go alphabetical here,
Oh, Lordy.
and go with Mr. Boyle to start us off.
Okay,
and, in the
thanks.
meantime, I'll take care of a few technical issues. But Rory, start us off on what your special superpower would be and why, and what its limitations and advantages would be.
Oh, man. All right, so I like going with the oddballs. I would love to speak or sing at will in 9-part harmony.
9-part harmony.
Yeah. Yeah. And any variation thereof. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up.
Okay.
Just such an odd thing for people to. It would really set people on edge.
That would be, that would be really interesting. Definitely. Ah, there he is.
There I am. I'm back.
Wow.
Mr. Fantastic.
9-part harmony.
Yeah.
That came from left field. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
9-part harmony.
What good does that do you?
That came
Well,
from
you got
left
a
field.
successful musical career. Yeah, that's good.
9-part
Nobody would be
harmony.
coming
What
after
good
this.
does that do you?
I am echoing.
There you go.
You're not anymore. Again, adjustments being made,
Yeah.
very slight adjustments. Go
Sorry
ahead.
about that. But
feel like
that's what would you
wouldn't
do
have
with
any-
that superpower?
I wouldn't have any arch enemies, so I'd be left alone. I only have adoring fangirls.
Okay, that were deaf.
Yeah.
9-part harmony.
Yeah.
Boy, you would be your own band.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
interesting because most people choose, the more mundane and expected powers, like Barb chose invisibility,
Mhm.
and some people choose, of course, invulnerability, the power of flight, super strength.
Yeah.
Interesting. That would be definitely you would in D&D terms you would have charm 18 plus 5.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you would just stun any adversaries immediately.
Probably the best bard ever.
Yeah. Because would it also have the ability to sing more than one melody at a time?
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah,
full
because
spectrum.
because then you could, as a bard, you could sing 9 different spells.
How
No.
cool would that be?
Think about that. You
Oh,
would be
wow.
able to sing 9 spells simultaneously.
That's a good point. Ooh,
Wow. Well,
That's-
I've been a DM, and I would go, wow.
I DM for a little bit. I do
Yeah,
appreciate it too.
I like it better than playing, actually.
Oh, really?
Do you?
Yeah, I like running better than playing.
Like, tell me about. We're going to diverge here just a minute, deviate from the subject. When you DM, do you like starting everyone out with level 1 and making it realistic, or do you just dive into an upper level and people have powers, and how do you like to go about it?
I haven't done it for a while, but the times that I have done it, I've always started everybody off at level 1.
Same.
Because you start jumping into higher levels right off. As a DM, I have no idea what I'm up against. And as players, they have no idea what they're up against me as a DM. So it's actually better if we all, figure out how we're going to interact from lower levels on. They need to find out early on I'm trying to kill them from day one. That's my job. I'm supposed to try to kill them. And I'm usually not very successful. Now, in the original in AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the wizards, the spellcasters, they were gone first time out, unless they had a really strong fighter with them to fight it off. But so I figure my job as DM is to try to kill them. So, think about it.
It makes sense.
Well, it gives them something. They're pushing against that. Obviously, they want this character to get up to 20th level. or higher. So yeah, but yeah, I had some power players. The last time I DM'd, we did Pathfinder, and it's got all this other excess stuff tacked onto D&D from way back in the day. It's a lot, but personally, I think it is more interesting, but it's also harder to DM. But these folks would know. These guys studied the books inside and out and knew every little trick to make their characters give their characters essentially superpowers to bring it full circle.
There we go.
Yeah.
What a great segue. You just set it right up, and now all I have to do is just hit it right off the tee. Speaking of superpowers, so before we go further, Infrafan says, as in God's motive, try to kill everyone. Yep, that's, and if you're playing D&D and you have the omnipotent role, there you go. It makes sense. So, Rob, tell us about your wish list for superpowers.
Well, number one, flight. I mean, I have the best flying dreams ever. The wind kind of picks up like it did today here, and I just kind of lean into it and float up into the air. Man, those are great dreams. So flying, definitely. But
what's the extent of that? Because you're not like leaping far distances. Do you have to be actively moving?
It's controlled. It's controlled floating.
Okay.
I can control wherever I go, but I just kind of lean into the wind and lift off, and then from there I can go wherever I want. Just kind of floating and I could dive and go faster, but usually it's just floating around above everybody. Most people don't look up, so you could spy on people all day long, and they wouldn't know it. You could just float above them all day if you're quiet.
Oh yeah,
No,
Garrett Hill says, "Love the beard, Rory." So you got a fan there. Infrafan chimes in and says, "The ability to stop time and the power of duplication." So those are two powers. You got a combo set there.
Yeah.
Stop time and the power of duplication. You could be quite a spy doing that.
Yep. Or a rogue in D&D terms, since we brought that in.
Oh yeah. I mean, we can always apply these to D&D if you want. My wish for a superpower is super intelligence.
That's my number 2. Yeah.
I always wanted to be, the intelligence of Reed Richards or Bruce Wayne, where I had not only knowledge but strategic, intuitive knowledge in terms of outthinking the adversaries and anticipating almost like chess moves, 5 or 6 or 7 ahead of time. And I thought that would be a great advantage to have beyond even having super strength or invulnerability or flight, because having that knowledge in advance, one could plan ahead like Batman does and, plan for everything ahead of time.
Have contingency plans out the wazoo.
Contingency plans, exactly.
A chess player, you got to think at least 3 moves ahead, and it's the more you can think ahead, the better. But of course, it gets more complicated as you go out from that initial move. But I can usually think a 2, maybe 3 ahead when I play chess.
At the most.
That's the best I can do.
Right.
My brain can't handle much more than that.
Well, it's speculating those what-if scenarios, well, if this happens, then they'll do this. If this happens, they'll do this. It comes in quite handy when playing. There's an old board game I love called Risk. I don't know if you guys
Oh, I love Risk, but I never win.
The game is
a conquest game. It's a lot of fun. So
it is. I like it too.
Bringing that full around. So let's say you're playing D&D, for example, and how would you use that power of flight, Rob, in D&D? I mean, what would you
I've already mentioned, spying on people and that sort of thing, and avoiding blows. It's hard unless they've got a ranged weapon. If they're swinging a sword at you, if you can fly, you can back up off away from it. For that matter, if they do have a ranged weapon, if you're far enough away, you can fly out of the path of whatever they're shooting at you.
Yeah.
So
it's good for outdoors, but if you're not, how about tight space.
If you're in a dungeon, it's a little more difficult. Yeah, it's depending on how high the ceiling is. Yeah.
Right. If you're in a huge cavern in Moria,
you're just going to be
or
a human
Khazad
off a
Dûm
wall
area.
Yeah.
Then you could fly. As the bridge collapses, you could just fly. Did we have this conversation? This is another little side note here, but have you guys have no doubt seen the cynical takes on the needlessness of the journey in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, where why didn't Gandalf just give the ring to the King of the Eagles and have him drop it into Mount Doom?
Yes.
Because it's a story.
Well, and number two, if the eagle touches that ring, does he have the mental capacity to overcome Sauron? Because it's part of that ring is part of Sauron. That's why when you put it on, if the more you put it on, the more you are overtaken by evil and Sauron. So would the eagle have enough intelligence to overcome that?
Interesting. Good, very, very good observation. That's the first I've heard of that. Infrafan says, I have a question for the crew. If you could wear the symbiote or wear Loki's mask, would you? Mr. Boyle.
See, I am unfamiliar with the powers of Loki's mask comes with it.
Okay, Rob, enlighten us on the powers of Loki's mask.
Yes, please. Me? No, I don't know anything about the mask.
Of the symbiote, we understand. I would not,
thanks.
because of the corruptible nature of it.
Exactly.
I assume Loki's mask has similar corrosive abilities. So I would say,
I didn't even know there was a Loki's mask.
These are new things. Eagles. He says eagles can't be trusted. He says
they save them at the end. What are you talking about?
Okay, he says Dark Horse rules for the mask, not movie rules. Okay. So obviously that was
shape-shifting?
An artifact that gave extreme power, but also corrupted the user. So I guess
kind of like the ring. Yeah.
The mask gives you any power, but converts your ID to an identity.
You have to look to an identity.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay. So
like
I guess the broader
monster
question is,
Forbidden Planet.
Would we trade our moral compass for greater power? Now, me being basically at my core an aspiring paladin, I would have to say no. So, Mr. Boyle.
No thanks.
Oh man, and now it just made it way tougher because I think the symbiotes look so cool. And each one has their own unique twist to it, But I'd have to say mask. Yeah.
What about you, Rob?
I would not have either. I wouldn't want to do either one. I have enough trouble fighting. I have enough trouble fighting my personal demons. I don't need any additional ones.
Good call.
I fight those every day. I don't need any additional.
Yeah, you don't need any more challenges
to fight.
Right?
Yeah. No, thanks.
Well, let's delve into that a little deeper. One of the classic characters that we brought up before when we were talking about powers and immense power. I'll take one from each of the big two: Superman from DC and Spider-Man from Marvel. Those guys have tremendous power, and particularly in Superman's case, the reserve and wisdom he has to use in terms of how much, when, and where, when to wield it, and so on. Discretion, I guess, is an excellent way to put that. So, do you enjoy... if you were writing a character like that, and we're talking about powers again here, but do you enjoy a character on the level of Superman, writing or drawing it, or a street level, or both? Talk a little bit about the range of powers and why one may be more to your liking than the other to create and draw and write about. Rob?
Again, flying is pretty cool because how do you pose that person as they're flying? do they fly with their arms kind of a skimbo and fly that way, or do they do it like a ballet dancer? I know a friend of mine, Steve Lytle, the late Steve Lytle, who drew Legion of Superheroes. He told me that he always tried to liken the poses, especially the women flying would be to a ballet dancer, jumping up and flying. So that's figuring out how to make that look interesting is kind of fun.
Yeah, would gravity still affect your body while you were flying, so your limbs would be pulled down toward the earth?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's
have good core strength.
Yeah.
Well, there are aesthetic poses for characters that fly,
right?
And there's probably a dozen or so. As artists, we try to capture and pose the POV of the figure in such a way that's the most powerful, depending on the needs of the script and the scene. But you can bring one or the other knee up, bring one arm back, and extend one arm forward. I always like to pick a little bit more unique angle so that the perspective is more dramatic.
Right.
Side views don't do much for me. I try to go for 3/4 or from the front, and the Superman hand sort of in the foreground like this, but it's larger. So there's always that challenge of how much foreshortening do we use without it looking ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like Jack Kirby toward the end of his career did it a little too much. It got a little. It got ridiculous.
Yeah.
Toward the end.
Yeah.
I don't like to do a lot of foreshortening, but you're right that a 3/4 view or such is a lot more flattering than a side or a straight on view.
Yeah.
But as far as posing the limbs, it depends on the speed of the flight. If it's full out, pedal to the metal, it's going to be arms straight out, legs straight back, and just flat
aerodynamic.
out. Yeah, just as aerodynamic as you can be, and that's going to be a lot more interesting. Now, if you're just kind of floating above, you can be kind of creative with that. You can have the legs kind of you're kind of floating if you're hovering, you can kind of float in the air. You could almost sit in the air. So you could do that. I haven't done too many flying characters in my career. Mine have all been pretty down to earth. But when they jump, I do poses like that because that's a sort of flight. It's got like the Hulk. He's not really flying, but many times he'll look like he's flying from the way that he's drawn.
Like Earls Superman.
Yeah, Superman was like that in the beginning. Yes,
in the beginning, correct. Rory, what about you? When you're writing, do you tend to want to write characters that are highly powered, of average power, or limited power? And tell us a little bit about why your choices are made.
I think all three probably have the same detriment as to when to use their power. If you're overpowered, you have to hold back. With any of them, you have to hold back. If you have a secret identity, I guess. Otherwise, your services will be in. You'll be a hot commodity. As was Barb's comic book was all about that.
Yeah.
It was all about that. Powered healing sounds great until everybody wants it, and the bad guys come for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of brings up a side question.
Okay.
Are secret identities still useful in comics?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you? Because I don't see a lot of it in use anymore. I see they've gotten away from it.
Yeah.
I think they've really gotten away from it. But I just wonder how useful they still are. Yeah, but Rory, you seem to think it is. Why is it? Why is it still useful then? Let's go. Let's go down that path.
Yeah, I think it's a nostalgia thing for one. I think it's useful to maintain a sense of normality. You can diverge your brain into I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm Batman. So in private, you can do what you want and you know yourself, but you're doing the facade thing. I remember a story about Hugh Jackman was talking about after the first X-Men movie came out, and he was at a Comic-Con dressed in the leather jacket, and he looked like Wolverine, and some guy walks by him and goes, too tall. So that's why nobody knew who Clark Kent was.
Cosplaying.
Yeah, that's why nobody knew who Clark Kent was. It does work.
Well, a lot of people thought that, just as a side note on Wolverine. And we all seen really new interpretations now that so many of the characters we grew up reading, especially you and me, Rob, being interpreted in a different way for the movies. And most of the time, it's an upgrade. I do think it would have been interesting to have Wolverine be a little scrappier and a little less of a leading man type. That would have been a little more fun, I think.
Yeah, have him be a short, scrappy guy who's because I don't know if you've dealt with too many short guys, but most of them seem to have a little chip on their shoulder. I'm 6 foot, so that I'm right just around the median. So that doesn't bother me. The world is built more for folks like me. I'm a little taller than the norm, which is like, I believe it's 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in there. But the world is not built for tall people, and it's not built for short people. It's built for those in the middle. Right. So if you're short, you're trying to compensate for how the world is treating you. So yeah, I think it would have been more interesting if he'd been a shorter guy and had a little bit more scrappy, more like the quote unquote real Wolverine in the comic
Wolverine, and for fans says provides a risk, and risk equals drama.
Absolutely, conflict and risk. Yep.
We also have a commercial interest here. When is the next campaign at Kickstarter? I am going to defer that to Roland, who will be, I'm sure, making some announcements next week, and I'll do a little house cleaning while we're on that subject. Next week and the following week, the week between Christmas and New Year's, there will be no Wednesday Wham. But next week, there's going to be a Christmas special hosted by our fearless leader, Roland, and I'm sure he'll be addressing any upcoming Kickstarters and Indiegogos and all the business stuff. So I don't want to steal any thunder there. But let's get back to our subject here with special powers. In terms of, let's say, our street level guys, think about Hawkeye, right? In terms of comparing him to the other Avengers, like a lot of people are like, yeah, dude can shoot an arrow and not miss. Woohoo! It's kind of, but then you think about it, that if it, again, with a good writer, you can really create some drama with a character like Hawkeye, even within perhaps a cosmic level story with the Avengers. What do you think about that? Rory, want to chime in on that for a moment?
Sure. I think with the street level guys, is Black Widow considered street level as well?
Yeah.
Which are just highly trained.
Yeah. Highly trained, right.
Mm-hmm. So they all have to try way harder just to keep up. And they get so good to probably max out the whole human competency thing. Because you can train so far until everybody will hit a cap eventually. So you become the best at what you do. And will that still even compare to those who don't even have to try and can fly around and sling webs with your one version or another? I think it's probably more difficult to write, even more difficult to visualize, to draw it.
That's a good point. Rob?
It's more subtle. You have to be more subtle with those kinds of characters because they have a lot more emotions going on. Because there's, excuse me, but if you're standing next to Thor, and he's going up against some guy, and it's not going well for Thor, what are you going to do? To help. But there, it's like the Wasp. She's not much. Yeah, there's not much going on with her, but boy, she could get in there irritate the crap out of somebody to draw their attention away, so that the Hulk or Thor can knock them out. So there's ways to handle it, but it's more subtle, and it's usually more character driven. So you have to have, there's more depth to those characters, or there should be.
Well, there should be.
Yeah. A lot more to lose. So you got a lot more to work with then. Yeah, you know, it's like the scene in, I forget which Avengers movie it was, when the Hulk was chasing Black Widow through the building. I was literally scared to death for her, and I could see her being just frightened out of her mind.
Oh yeah.
Because here's this green monster, angry, chasing her through the building, ripping walls apart to get to her. And she knows if he can get a hold of her, she's dead. So, but
I agree.
But in drawing that, you can't just draw punches and that. You've got to show that emotion on their face. So,
correct.
And in their body language, too, for that matter. You've got to show that fear. So it's a little more subtle.
It's a little more subtle.
That's what I like. That's what I like.
I like that too, and I'm going to comment on that. I want to quote Infrafan here, and vice versa. You could have an amazing character with amazing powers, and a writer could easily mess them up. Hate to point to Superman, but people seem to have more fun with him doing an evil version. We've touched on that before in the program, that people seem to have a problem writing Boy Scouts in today's more cynical climate.
Yeah.
And I think there are many reasons for that, but boy, what a challenge for an aspiring writer to come in and really give that Boy Scout some depth. You know, give that. I mean, I'm old enough to remember cowboy movies when the lone good guy cowboy had to come in and clean up the town, whether he was the sheriff or what have you, or Gunsmoke or whatever the environment was. And the writing had to be good because you didn't want the character to come off as corny or campy. And yet, you know, you had a town full of corrupt, basically gangsters, and he had to stand his ground, and he had to be tough. And I'd love to see a good writer, a good creative team, take a stab at doing that with, my three favorite Boy Scouts from the big two would be Superman, and then Spider-Man over at Marvel, and then Captain America. I think you got some good Boy Scout opportunities there. Why do you think people have trouble with that, Rob? What's your take on why some people have problems with writing the Boy Scouts?
Because there's less conflict. That's why I think when Marvel brought him back, having Bucky, his partner, having died, gave him a quote unquote weakness, gave him something to be angsty about.
His humanity.
You know, so that showed the human side of him. Whereas in the original comics, he was just, he just punched guys and laugh his way through everything. But suddenly having lost a partner there's the wind.
Wow. Oh yeah, I hear that.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, it's been like that all afternoon.
See you, Rob.
But
hang on to something, Rob. Anchor yourself.
It's tougher because, well, number one, most people aren't that big a Boy Scout. Most of us have. Like I said, I was fighting my own personal demons earlier. Yeah, I have. There's occasionally I could be an asshole. So, but most of us have that side of us. But
sure,
how do you show that with a Boy Scout character? With Superman, if he's like that, somebody's dead.
Somebody's dead,
or something's destroyed, or
Right.
So
right.
How do you play that? So
how do you play that, Rory, as a writer? How do you write a very powerful character that's a Boy Scout and not make them boring?
Well, the conflict is already inherent in that story. They will always be conflicted by right or wrong. So
Okay.
I guess it would get kind of boring if you do the same thing over and over again. I had to make this choice and this choice. So when you make a choice and it's the right choice and it still has bad consequences, you still deal with the aftermath. There's always going to be circumstances, good or bad. But you still have to make the right choice. Still have to deal with those decisions.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the aftermath. And
The aftermath.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, good
Do
or
I go
bad.
fight this
Yeah.
this other superhero or this giant entity and destroy half the city? That's a lot of dead people.
One of the more compelling characters that I remember, just pulling this out of the air because you guys are talking about conflict, to me, I never see them as complete Boy Scouts, but I think, and you touched on this, Rory, I think what we're talking about is the Boy Scout is not perfect in and of themselves. What they do is align themselves with what they see is a perfect moral compass, right? So
Okay.
their flaws can be, like, for instance, Bruce Willis's character, John McClane in Die Hard. He is a Boy Scout in a way because he's the good guy trying to save everybody in that building taken hostage. But you can tell through the dialogue and through the dialogue of his estranged wife that he's not a perfect human being and has a lot of flaws and has made a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And part of the reason we root for him is because it seems as though he wants to make up for that.
Yeah. And it doesn't make him an anti-hero.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is a common slippery slope you fall into.
Yes. Yes. Having flaws doesn't make you an anti-hero. Let's go a little deeper. What does make an anti-hero rather than a struggling hero?
That's a good question. Wow.
I think like anti-heroes, like what they've done with a lot of bad guys. Well, Morbius is coming out, right? Guarantee you that's what they're going to do with that. Venom. That's what they do with that. That's what they did with that. All the lovable bad guys. Loki.
Punisher. Punisher's a good example.
Punisher's a great example.
Yeah.
That's an anti-hero for sure.
Big time anti-hero.
Big time anti-hero. And for fans says, I think people think that in general people are good or bad, so seeing a good person seems like a characteristic instead of a choice. It's hard being a good person and doing the right thing. That's an excellent point, and that's exactly what we're discussing in a way. He follows up with Indiana Jones is a similar example to John McClane. Exactly. Indy, especially in the first film, he's portrayed as a professor who is a little too eager to go on treasure hunts and maybe has done some things behind the scenes that he may not be proud of to acquire some artifacts. But in the end, when push comes to shove, he'll sacrifice himself to defend the innocent and defeat what he considers to be evil, which makes him a likable Boy Scout character.
That's a good point. I think that's where the flaw is in anti-heroes. It's relativism. Because
relativism.
Those bad guys think what they're doing is good. Or that's a type of bad guy. That's an archetype. So what I'm doing is like Thanos. There's a subreddit. Thanos did nothing wrong.
What? Well, then my favorite is the discussion and this can really become a philosophical polemic, but I won't go too far into it. But the discussion about Magneto, right? Because Magneto thinks he's right, and Magneto is basically becoming the Nazi prison guard that he escaped, right? Because he's saying we have to be superior to them because they're oppressing us, so we got to fight back. But in the earlier stages of the X-Men, they were written more the way Superman is written in terms of, despite the fact that humanity hates us and fears us and wants to put us in camps or isolate us from the rest of humanity, we still fight for them because they don't really know any better and we do, right? So that elevated them philosophically and on the lawful good scale. And the X-Men now are written more chaotic good, neutral, in terms of we got to do what we got to do to survive. Tough guys. If we have to beat up some we have to crack some human eggs. Too bad. It's got to happen. What do you think, Rob? Jump in on that a little bit. I'd love to get your take on stuff.
I haven't been following the X-Men since they took that turn. My last bout with them was probably late 90s.
Okay.
So I haven't read much of anything about the X-Men since then. But that I don't know that I like that.
Yeah, they're a little bit more militant, is the best way to describe it, and they're sort of intolerant. And it's kind of like, well, guys, that's you have a point. You have been abused, but isn't the path of the hero to rise above revenge? Isn't the old wise saying, if you take the path of revenge, dig two graves, right?
Yeah, because you killed yourself too. Yeah.
Right.
You killed what's good about yourself.
Killed what's good about yourself.
The X-Men for me has always been a metaphor for oppressed people, like people of color,
of course,
gays and such.
Sure.
And perhaps it's gone in the direction that those movements seem to have gotten more militant as well. So I think it's probably following the same thing.
Yeah.
We've been pounding against this wall all this time, getting our foreheads bloody, and now we're going to start bloodying noses while we're at it. So right. I kind of get
groups, always.
Yeah, but I get that, but again, I'm with you though. That doesn't make them heroes. That makes them anti-heroes, which are not. Most of us should not aspire to that. We shouldn't go to a rally and say we're going to go walking down the street and attack the Capitol building and start busting doors down and trying to catch the vice president and hang him.
You shouldn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
You should never justify breaking the law ever. I mean, if you're going to be on that lawful side of good, you shouldn't burn down a city. You shouldn't break into stores and steal stuff.
Exactly.
Even if you have a point, there's a better way to make a point. I remember as a kid, this really struck me. I watched a TV series called Kung Fu, which you may remember, Rob.
I love that
as a young man. Yeah, and one of my favorite episodes was called An Eye for.
Continues.
Mine was the original show and that. The original episode was called An Eye for an Eye, and the subject matter was pretty harsh. This was right after the Civil War, and a Union soldier had sexually abused a Southern Confederate soldier's daughter and gotten her pregnant, and she lost the baby, and she was grieving over it. And of course, Kane, being an empathetic person and a Shaolin priest, was helping her through that grief. And the father had seen Kane earlier in the episode dispatch some bad guys with his kung fu. And he grabs his cavalry saber, and he runs over to Kane, and he says, "I've seen what you can do. You're strong. I'm an old man. You can take revenge for what's happened to my daughter. Bring justice to these people. Get revenge." And Kane says no, and the Confederate general just says, "Well, if I don't have the right to revenge, then who does?" And Kane turns to the camera and says, "No one." And he takes the sword, and to punctuate the statement, takes the sword and breaks it and throws it down. And that was really powerful for me as a young person watching that, because we tend to get caught up in a lot of revenge stories, and that took that idea to a deeper level of, no, even if you have a point, even if you're justified, you dare not take up the path of vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what happens when you do that. Okay, one side takes revenge against the other. Well, now you've offended them. They're going to come back. So it's going to be constantly back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it stop? It has to stop.
Yes.
So, someone has to choose to stop. So,
the higher calling is, no, we're not going to do this. And that to me, again, elevates, and especially the X-Men and even Superman, when Superman is faced with people who hate him because they fear him, when he's written correctly, he tries to make the person understand, look, I'm not here to judge you or to dominate you or to take advantage of you because I'm stronger and more powerful. I'm here to protect you, and his action then demonstrates that. And to me, that's an aspect of mythological heroism in the context of comic books that elevates that figure to something more than just a hero. That makes you think about it. Like, I think, again, and this brings us full circle to a lot of writing these heroes and their powers depend on the demographic. The younger demographic understands a more broadly written character like the Hulk, or even Cap or Spider-Man, when they're just bashing the bad guys, bringing them to justice, and so on and so forth. But then when we get a little bit older and we understand the world's a little more complex, nuanced, you can understand the choices that are made. For instance, why doesn't Batman just use a gun like Azrael did and just kill all these people? Why does he keep putting them in Arkham Asylum? it seems like this ridiculous revolving door, right?
Yeah.
But then, of course, as we get older and we understand a little more the nuance of what it means to be heroic, we understand that the higher calling is to contain the evil, not necessarily to always slay the dragon. I read an article on the icon of St. George and the Dragon, and it's very interesting if you look at it. St. George is not slaying the dragon. St. George has the dragon at the point of his sword and has him controlled. And there's a lot of academic and scholarly writing about why that is. But in summary, it's simply to show that we are to subdue the darkness within ourselves. It's part of us. We can't purge it completely, but to completely slay it would make us inhuman. But to completely give in to us would also make us inhuman. So it's the struggle of that. And again, which is why I never see a problem with writing a Boy Scout character, because Boy Scouts have a code. They're not perfect. They're trying to live by a code. The Knights of the Round Table are a perfect example of that. Cap is a perfect example of that.
They were heavily flawed. Every
Exactly.
one of them had
Yes.
nasty flaws that they
Yes.
had to overcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lancelot, anyone? Lancelot?
Yeah.
We have
And
Knights of the Round
all of
Table.
them have one thing or another that they're battling within themselves,
Sure.
including Guinevere.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
So
And they just made a Gawain movie, right?
Yes,
Did
the
they?
Green
Okay.
Knight. Did
Okay.
you see that, Rob? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. I read somewhere about it, but and then it promptly forgot about it. But was it a film in the theater? Or was it streaming somewhere? Do you remember?
It was limited. I do. It was limited release in the theater. It was also streaming. It was developed by this more auteur style production company called A24.
Okay.
Who did some horror movies. One was The Witch, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
they did some very, very unique non-Hollywood approach to their storytelling. So
Right.
in that vein, when they took on somebody like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, they took it through a different filter, and it's a much
Right.
more psychological story of Gawain trying to earn respect. In this particular story, he's a young aspiring knight, and he so desperately wants to be taken as seriously as the other more storied, experienced knights of the Round Table. So when the challenge comes from this supernatural character, the Green Knight, who comes in and makes his challenge, we see the struggle inside of Gawain, and we see him make a bunch of mistakes, and ultimately we see him face the Green Knight and his own fears.
I'm going to have to write that down so I can look that up.
Please, please watch that if you can. It's an excellent. Rory, have you had the chance to see?
I meant to when I first read about it. I think I saw it in Wired magazine or somewhere like that.
Yeah,
and it got mentioned, and I thought that sounds fascinating.
It really is. The visuals are atypical. They definitely went against the formulaic approach of the typical story of the knight, and so we get more into Gawain's psychology of why he so desperately wants to be accepted, and what that forces him to do, and what he realizes at the end of his quest. And it's quite well done.
Really,
as a matter of fact,
I kind of held off on it. I love Arthurian legend. I absolutely love it. And I don't know, just modern versions of these films, like all the Beowulfs going back to the 80s, never did it for me. And I
never did it.
Beowulf. I love Beowulf. It's got so much potential to be a movie.
Yeah, it really does.
It's never done right.
It's one of the first demigod level heroes stories.
Yes, very good point. Very good point. Now, what about Thor? You brought up Thor, Rob, and earlier, and he's an interesting character in that he's got this very cosmic level power, and yet he's extremely flawed, much like the Greco-Roman Hercules, right? So very flawed individual. What would talk to us a little bit about how that works for you for Thor and his powers?
Well, the original Thor was Don Blake as his secret identity, and he struck his. He was a lame guy. He had a bad leg, so he used a cane and found this stick that became when he struck it on the ground, it turned into Mjolnir, the Thor's weapon.
Thor's hammer.
So being able to I kind of like these types of characters. Captain America, originally was a weak guy and takes the serum and becomes a superhuman specimen. Iron Man puts on is just a regular old guy, puts on a suit, becomes a superhero. I like those kinds of things. I like that aspect of them, that they're a weak person who has figured out a way to become strong. Now, personally, I prefer Iron Man's method than taking chemicals or using magic. Something
so you just want to be rich and smart.
I do. I definitely.
I mean, you already got the Hanson.
I play the lottery.
So you might as well be a triple threat.
I don't know about that. I got the only thing I got going for me is this. So like Robert Downey Jr. had for Tony Stark. But I wouldn't mind being rich. I play the lottery. I'm hoping for a win. So I'm hoping for a win. I don't know if I can get the smart part down, so I can create a quantum machine that will take me through time. But
that brings me to InfoFan's comment. Now, let me ask this: after this conversation, what power do you want now, and how would you use it? I still would want that super intellect because I, for all the reasons we've discussed before, but in addition, wouldn't it be great to invent the cure for cancer and be that guy?
Yeah,
But what are the boundaries of it?
The boundaries of it would be I would only have earthly knowledge, right? Because then if you had cosmic knowledge of all things, it would be complex, and you would then maybe fall into that God complex of being above everyone and not being able to relate to it.
There lies madness.
Yes.
There lies madness.
That's a very good point.
If
We're
you
about
understand
to go to H.P. Lovecraft territory.
if you know everything, people are gonna think you're crazy, even if you're not.
Even if you're
you
not.
Even if you understand everything in the universe, you're gonna be. No one's gonna be able to talk to you. Really?
Right.
There's
Right.
not. It's like, but it's like the difference between me and the level of income that I have, and Tesla. Elon
Musk. Yeah.
Who's got money out the wazoo. He can throw a couple of dollars away and it's nothing, whereas I have to count every penny. His life is light years away from mine.
Mm-hmm.
And having that kind of knowledge is the same thing. Having an ultimate knowledge, like a cosmic knowledge, that puts you on a whole different plane. No one can talk to you. And everyone's going to be an ant. There's going to be an insect. So,
there's I'm going to be a Trekkie here in reference, and you know where I'm going with this, Rob. If you remember this classic episode,
yes,
one of the best episodes of the Star Trek series, first season, was called "Where No Man Has Gone Before."
The second pilot,
where one of Kirk's friends actually touches. He comes into contact with knowledge and a super intellectual force that then causes him to become a godlike being, and he ends up becoming so powerful he can't relate to his crew members or anyone else, and becomes a danger to everyone, and
including himself. But
including himself. Yeah, I thought that's a brilliant. Wasn't it great how in those days they would touch on philosophical questions as well as just good old-fashioned conflict,
Yeah, and it's interesting that the first pilot was deemed cerebral, too cerebral, but the second one was too. I mean, look at what the underlying thing is. It's about absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's philosophical. It's cerebral. Now there's a lot more laser blasts but there were laser blasts in the first one. I don't get how they killed the first one, but they didn't kill the second one, because it's essentially the same thing. It was also cerebral in a different way.
And that brings us to superpowers again. They encountered superpowers in the first pilot. The Cage is what it was originally called before it was repackaged as the Menagerie later on in the series. But the idea was basically that the Enterprise crew encountered a race of beings and they had that old-fashioned, almost retro 50s look with the big brains, that they could project right into our minds whatever we wanted. And they did that in order to put us in a cage and study how we responded to stimuli. And being the stubborn, independent people that human beings are, Captain Pike rejected the fact that they couldn't understand, because they gave him the illusion of this beautiful woman companion. He lived in a paradise. It was kind of the early Matrix story. It was the Matrix, 40 years before the Matrix.
Yeah.
And basically the idea was, we're giving you everything your little human mind wants, but you just reject the fact because you're in a cage and we're watching you respond. And he couldn't handle it. And basically he found a way to break out of that, because basically it was the dignity of being a human being. We would not allow someone to put us in a cage. Even if they gave us everything we wanted, it was still a cage, even if it was a gilded cage.
Right.
Thoughts on that, Rory? Talk to me about that. Apply that a bit to today's world as well.
Yeah, I don't know. My first thought was, I think Twilight Zone did that as well. Another, before or after, because Twilight Zone was still in black and white, and original Star Trek was it?
No.
It was late 60s.
Was it black and white originally, the Star Trek, or was it in color?
No, it was in color from day one.
That's what I thought.
It was after 64.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again,
66 is when it started.
66.
Right, that theme is a reference to, and there's probably a precursor even before this,
Oh,
but
I'm sure there was a
to
book,
my
yeah.
knowledge, it's a reference to the lotus eaters, right? It's Greco-Roman mythology. It's Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Odysseus lands on an island and they eat plants that make them just docile and everything's great and beautiful and
You lost
your
when you've got everything you want.
You lost your headpiece. Yeah, and
I'm back.
It reveals itself again in Rome with the bread and circuses.
Yes.
And I think now that we're beyond the advent of the information age, beyond the advent of the internet, that we have pushed it to its extent very quickly, because computer power doubles every 18 months. I think we've all reached the end of the internet. You go on any social media, you're just going to see the same thing over and over and over again, and everyone just parroting each other with challenges and dances and all this stuff. It's just the same thing.
Yeah, it's it's like Facebook and the internet. It's all conflict right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and I am. If it wasn't for the fact that Facebook allows me to connect with people that I wouldn't be able to connect with any other way right now, I'd be giving it up, because it's gotten to the point where they've put artificial intelligence in charge, and if you say something slightly off that doesn't work for the algorithm, you'll get bounced.
And that's why it's free, because if it's free, you're the product.
Yeah. My information, my personal stuff is what they're going for. Yeah, it's So, but I'm hooked. I can't just stop it.
And they make it to be addictive.
Yeah, they do. It's made to be addictive. So, welcome, Brent.
Welcome, Brent.
Welcome to Philosophy 101.
We're talking about Facebook in the context of, believe it or not, this began with the discussion of Star Trek: The Cage, when the Enterprise encounters the Telosians, who can project any sort of pleasing image and fake world into your mind, just so they can watch how you respond in a cage. And Captain Pike rejects this because he says, look, the dignity of humanity is such that we have free will, and even if you give me everything I want and I'm seeing everything I've ever wanted, it doesn't matter. I still know I'm in a cage and I'm going to try to break out. And that led us to what aspects of that classic Lotus Eaters myth and metaphor are we facing today? And that's when Rory brought up the internet, and Rob agreed with him. And I also bring up anything that promises you utopia. Anything that promises utopia and says, hey, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. You'll get everything you want. You just don't worry about it. Look over here.
Have a bite of this apple. It tastes great, right?
You'll own nothing and be happy.
You'll own nothing and be happy, right? Exactly. So point being that we were talking about superpowers as well, but so I'd love to get your take on what superpower you'd like to have and why, and tell us all about that, Brent. I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, first I wanted to say, remember in the new Star Trek movies, the second one where Pike is taken aboard that Romulan dude's ship, and they stick the giant black bugs in him? That's what makes me think of Facebook. So,
yeah, brilliant.
Strangely
good
enough,
call.
Yeah,
wow. Good call. Brent.
I just can't get over the ability to fly. I think that is just about the coolest thing there is. I think it beats anything. It's one of those, there's two kinds of people in this world. They all fit into this category. You either, when you get the choice of a superpower, you start thinking, what can I do to make my life easier? And the other people are like, what can I do that would just be super cool? And I never want to be in the first category because I don't want more efficiency in my life. I want more excitement and joy. So flying would do that. The ability to teleport would be very efficient, and I think it would get really old after a while. And then I'd probably put on 100 pounds because I don't walk.
That was going to be my question. Do you still have to work out?
Yeah, exactly. Why would I work out?
Atrophy away.
Yeah. So that's what I think.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Rob's,
I agree.
Rob's power was the ability to fly as well.
Yep. Definitely.
Mine was super intelligence to the point where I could, understand everything earthly, to the point where I could come up with the cure for cancer. I could outthink all of our adversaries so that we would always be one step ahead and be better off that way. And then Rory had one of the most interesting choices for a superpower. Explain yours, because I would not do a good job explaining it. Go ahead, Rory.
I want the ability to speak or sing at will in 9-part harmony or any parts less than. So 2-part, 3-part, 4-part, all the way up to 9.
So that's fun. That's fun.
Left field.
It would be
Left field. That would be cool, though.
It would be cool, right? It would be very cool.
Yeah.
You'd be a rock star.
Have an arch enemy, all right? So that's conflict adverse.
You're
my arch enemy. No,
he's always flat.
I want to teach the world to not sing, but rap.
Oh, wow. And his symbol would be like a note with a slash through it, right?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Man. So, Brent, tell us a little bit about writing characters. When you write a character, do you prefer or do you have a preference? The challenges of a highly cosmically powered character, or an earthbound character that doesn't have any superpowers and maybe wants them, or maybe has a mild superpower?
It's funny. I write 2 comics now, and it didn't occur to me until I was a little down the road there that everyone has the same powers in both books, which is they have a very mild form of super strength, and they are kind of invulnerable. And what's funny is I've never actually thought about writing any characters that are more powerful than that. I think in part because superpowers are awesome, but they almost, like, you have to, the stories that I want to tell are really kind of grounded in, like Cape Town is basically, in a nutshell, what would happen if there really were superheroes? Like if cosplay was real and cosplayers actually had a little bit of superpowers, and then they could actually kind of be superheroes. If any of them suddenly had the power to like hoist a building, like, that's actually not a bad idea. I might have to think about that. But suddenly, I mean, see, the funny thing, I keep thinking about this in the comic book universes is there's all these variety of powers. There's all these variety of superheroes with all these varieties of motivations for what they do. But there's not a lot of stories about the average person who looks at that and goes, who am I? I am nothing compared to these people. These people could literally, I mean, you get afraid if you see someone carrying a gun. That guy could take my wallet if he wanted. Well, what if this guy could melt your face because he was in a bad mood? I mean, at that point, you're like, suddenly life seems much more tenuous, which is a really compelling idea. But at the same time, it really doesn't, at this point in my life, resonate terribly with the kind of stories I want to tell. I like telling stories about normal people who get a little bit of a leg up. And what does that do? Does that make them does that make them think they're better than everybody else? Like Thor really, that question is answered, like, Yes, I am. I'm better than all of you. In fact, it says so on my bio, you know what I mean? So
Yes,
and
yeah.
at that point, the question is answered. So he gets to go off and fight Ulick or all these guys that would petrify us. But then there's guys like Captain America who's like, I took a serum and I'm a little stronger and I'm a little faster. So what do I do with that? And that's what I love about Captain America is that he decides he's going to be the best he can be and do the best he can do with what little he's got. That really, I think, is compelling because everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
I cannot relate to being a god, but I can relate to having been blessed with something that maybe someone else hasn't. And what am I going to do with that? So
yeah. We touched on this earlier as well, that the choices we make often are what define hero or villain or anti-hero, in terms of, it's not so much, hey, he's a good guy or he's a bad guy. It's the choices they make align them on the the alignment wheel, if we're going to go for the D&D way.
We've been doing it all night. Might as well
We've been
keep
doing it all
on.
night. So lawful good, neutral good, was it? But I brought up John McClane in Die Hard, and the one reason that it's so fun to watch that movie is he's just a guy, but he's a hero because we know he's flawed because of dialogue with his estranged wife. We know that he wants to make up for it because of his dialogue. We know that he's stubborn and difficult because of his dialogue and the way he acts. But we also know that he's willing to put his life on the line to rescue, in many cases, total strangers trapped in this building by a bunch of killer terrorists. So
because he knows he's the only one who can.
Right.
Yeah. One of the best things about John McClane is he knows, at least in the first couple movies, he is the quintessential. He's different from all the other alpha males from the 80s in one respect, in my mind, and that is he knows he is in over his head. When he finds out the terrorists have taken over Nakatomi Plaza, what does he do? He calls the police. What else is he going to do? He's not going to be like, oh, let me go get a gun. Finally, he has to he realizes there's no one else. And that's why I hate all the Die Hard sequels from then on out, except for 2 is decent. Because at the end, he is a superhero. He's just causing mayhem everywhere, but he's John McClane. And I'm like, no. Not much John McClane. So
yeah, I like that. And therein lies the pathway to the more sophisticated demo that we're writing, or I shouldn't say sophisticated, but mature demographic. As we get older, we tend to relate more to humans and their choices, and they're not super powered. And I think the younger audience may relate more to the more Hulk, Thor, a broader sense of power, because, at that stage, they're trying to understand the world around them. So they get mad and they want to be like the Hulk and Hulk smash, and then as we get older, we realize the more nuanced world around us and what it means to make choices. And I think that's what's so cool about comic books and the world we're all creating in, is that you have a full range there. You can write for the younger audiences that are growing into understanding the world, and you can write for us old guys who have seen a few things and want to understand things better. I enjoy writing the characters you just spoke about, Brent, and actually drawing them as well, because I love the chance to give that expression of doubt, like, a character like John McClane, like, I'm gonna die here if these cops don't show up soon and take these guys out. I'm done. This is not gonna be good, and that makes it appealing. Infrafan says Hulk smash, but also Hulk sort and recycle. That's a good Hulk. Good Hulk.
Okay. Recycle, reuse.
What do you guys think about a character like, let's say, the Punisher? Why does that resonate with some and not with others? Brent, take a stab at the Punisher for us.
Okay. This may piss off some Punisher fans. The Punisher is a psychopath, straight up. He basically just loves killing bad guys. I mean, it's kind of like we're lucky he's on our side kind of thing, but in a way, not really.
No.
Yeah. I feel like there are some characters that are like, why does Jason from Friday the 13th movies have such a fan following? I mean, he's utterly despicable. And yet people love him. Like, you can literally buy a Christmas ornament with Jason wrapped in
yes, that's terrible.
Yes.
Horrible.
And then guys like Michael Myers. The other guy. And you're just like, why do people like this? Why they don't just like being scared, so they like those movies. They like the guy. Why do they? And I think there's just a segment of society that really just revels in the dark side of things. There are
cultural swing.
Especially when Garth Ennis was writing Punisher, I decided I could not go there. The description of the stuff he was doing in that book made me, like, my stomach clench up. Like, that doesn't sound. He wrote a book called "The Punisher Destroys the Marvel Universe," I think. And literally, it was a one-shot where the Punisher just goes and he pins down each hero and pops him in the head. And I'm like, this is fun. Apparently to some people it is. I cannot relate to those people on a personal level, at least not in that regard. So I don't understand it, but they're out there and they like it. So
I think we all have that in us, and that's why the Hulk is appealing. Mm-hmm. We all have that side of us that wants to just, somebody pees us off, we're going to go boing as hard as we can, thump them back. So there's that in all of us. I have that in me. I know I do. I have to keep it down because, like we talked about earlier, you thump, they're going to thump back again. So it's thump, 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 thump.
And it never ends.
You got to stop somewhere. But the Punisher doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. He's a juggernaut. He just keeps going.
Indiscriminate killers, regardless of their intention. To me, you've left the realm of hero at that point. I in a similar vein, I don't understand the fascination with Dexter. The idea that he's a serial killer who hunts serial killers. Like, I don't care. He's a bad guy. I'm sorry.
I have no interest. No interest in Dexter.
It's just bizarre.
I actually watched Dexter for a while, and there is actually a fine line, because Dexter struggles with, he calls it his dark passenger. I don't know if that's whatever. But anyway, the point being, he doesn't want to be this way, and he has to try to find how to live with it, which in a weird way is relatable to people. Like, I cannot think like the
I
Punisher.
can see that.
I can't relate to the Punisher on any level, because yes, there are times when I see someone who acts badly or does something to me, and I just wish I could show them what's what. You can't do that to me. But the weird thing is,
you're right. He's a psychopath.
He doesn't pull back, and
he's a psychopath. You're right.
Yeah.
Is it justice taken too far?
If you think about the Hulk, he's an interesting character because he has all this power. I mean, why hasn't he killed millions of people? Because he can't stop, and he's driven by rage. It's because there is something in him that does pull him back.
Yeah.
And that is compelling. What is it? It's been told dozens of times. Well, there's lots of different things. But the Punisher, nothing holds him. Running out of bullets doesn't hold him back. Then
he's the id let loose.
The id let loose.
Unleashed.
Exactly.
Just like in Forbidden Planet.
Yes.
Id turned loose.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yep. We're referencing a lot of classic sci-fi.
My
Is that
favorite
right?
sci-fi movie. I love that movie.
Wow.
I bought, I don't know if it was last Christmas or the Christmas before, Walmart had a Robbie the Robot for about $20.
Oh wow!
and it walks and talks. So I went and bought one. Within a week, the price had doubled.
Oh,
So
wow.
but I have him. If you check my Facebook page, I've actually posted. I put a Santa hat on him and had him hold a sign, and he's going, "Merry Christmas from Altair 4."
Now, maybe you can clarify this for me, Rob, because I've always wondered. The Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet also became the robot for Lost in Space.
No.
Okay.
He's similar.
Okay.
He's similar. If you look closely at him, the only part that's still the same is the torso.
Okay.
The torso is very similar, and the
articulate
the arms. Yeah, the arms are essentially ducts from your
dryer.
A dryer duct. That's all they are. So with
Those
little,
are the best robots.
with little pincers at the end. But the head's different and the bottom is different too.
Okay.
Robbie has legs and walks. The robot actually has treads on the bottom.
Yes.
So I think he also can articulate those and walk with them too, but he usually just rolls.
Well,
so
he would say,
different.
"Warning, Will Robinson!
Yeah,
warning,
danger,
warning,
danger,
danger!" Yeah. But I always wondered if he was inspired by the Forbidden Planet.
Obviously he was. If you look at them, they're similar.
They're very
enough
similar
that they would be. Yeah. Robbie actually showed up. I think he was in a Twilight Zone episode.
Oh yeah.
He was in another. He was in another movie. Gosh, I can't remember the name. Invisible Boy or something. Which was he was also in that and a couple of other TV shows where he shows up. But
I just made a Twilight Zone knockoff.
Yeah,
look it up for us.
Well, so Rory, tell us about your favorite sci-fi movie, since that was just thrown out. I mean, your favorite sci-fi movie. This is going to be interesting.
Sci-fi movie?
Yeah, it can be a book.
Oh man,
but it can be a TV show.
Oh gosh, what if it's a movie and a TV show?
Okay, so you got it covered.
Firefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Firefly, Serenity.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what they did with that was obviously ahead of their time, because it wasn't until years later everybody picked up on it.
Yeah.
Now there's books, comic books. I got a keychain around here somewhere. I mean,
wow.
Extremely well done, and it's that they're all human. They all have flaws. They're all in the same predicament together, and that theme of suffering together brings you closer. Which I was just watching Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers last week, and that's the whole that's what all that's about. Yeah, Nathan Fillion was in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
I always saw Firefly as essentially a Western.
Yeah, space
really.
Western.
Yeah, it's a space Western. You know, instead of a coach or whatever, it's a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of horses, it's a spaceship. So yeah,
absolutely.
So it was essentially a Western. I mean, it post Civil War. Anyone?
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Yes.
So it had a lot of
the
those
big
elements.
bad.
Yeah, and he just kind of flipped it into science fiction. So
that's very cool. What about you, Brent? Favorite sci-fi movie? Go. Don't think about it too long.
You know, the Larson household is very much into Alien and Alien.
I was going to say that. Why did I say that? I was going to say
wow,
that.
That's so cool.
I knew that.
I actually have this picture of Ripley and
man. I swear I was going to say Alien first.
Man, Alien
I love that. I like that movie. It is. It's a classic.
It is
a masterpiece. In fact,
it
is
does
a
not
masterpiece.
age.
No.
And the two of them together are so perfect because they're so vastly different.
Yes.
The first one is Monster in the House, total creepy survival horror kind of.
Based on a 50s movie, I forget the name of it. It was shot in black and white, where a creature gets on board a spaceship returning from Mars or somewhere, and it's almost it's almost a total ripoff. Yeah,
I like the Simpsons version.
There's a
Santa's little
that's
helper.
a brilliant movie.
Yeah, it really is. There's a story, a short story that it's based on called "Who Goes There?"
Yes.
And if you look that up, that's a big part of the inspiration for Alien. But Alien is my choice too. It's kind of a genre blend of. It's really horror sci-fi, but still, you know,
a lot of jump scares in that one.
A lot of jump scares, really, really eerie. But yeah, one of my favorites.
It scared the pants
milestone.
off me. Yeah,
It's
it's a masterpiece. It definitely is.
Yeah.
And made by my favorite director, Ridley Scott, who made my other favorite movie of all time, which is not a genre movie. No, Gladiator. Love that movie.
That's not to my mind. That's not quite a masterpiece. It's very close. But I really liked it though.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed Gladiator.
I like Blade Runner as well. I even like. What I love about Ridley Scott is, as an artist, his movies are like moving paintings. They're beautiful to watch.
Yes, yeah. Kubrick was like that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even Kingdom of Heaven, which I mean, who would even try to make a movie about the Crusades? Right. But it's beautiful
with Orlando Bloom.
Right.
You know,
right. With
that
Orlando
movie
Bloom.
gets better every time I see it.
It does.
It really
does.
It's
My
excellent.
gosh.
But we've come to the close of our show, guys. We have really done a good job filling this with Skeleton Crew. I appreciate everybody being here and discussing superpowers and fun. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and do some housekeeping here. We won't be here next Wednesday or the following Wednesday, so we won't see everyone again until the new year. Next week, Roland is doing a Christmas special, which some of us will be a part of, depending on our availability. You'll see more information about that on the Silverline Comics page. But the following week, Wednesday Wham will be taking our vacation to be with family and friends during the holiday. And we wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And as we like to always close out our broadcast and bring it up, bring the colors up, bring the phrase up, we always say, make mine Silverline. Good night, everybody.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.